Welcome back guys on my YouTube channel. Today I'm in Albettone, my local track where I usually do the ECU testing, and we are in company of Fantic Motor. Today we will test the brand new 2022 models. The ones I'm gonna focus more on are the 450 because they are the big news, the Motocross 450 and the Enduro 450. I believe this could be a great base for a rally bike, so I'm really curious to understand how the engine response is, the gearing and suspensions. But with no further ado, let's get our helmet and go inside the track. Today is a really big achievement for me because usually it's the bike that gets me out, that knocks me out. For the first time I've knocked out the bike, got a flat front tire, meaning that not even the bike can stand how fast I enter turns. Okay guys, many of you always brag about the fact that you can't use the enduro bike in the motocross track and that the suspensions are too soft, that there is not enough power. For this reason, so that you have no excuse, what I'll do, I'll get the new XEF 450 and ride it on the motocross track. Here we are in Albettone, a very technical track where many years ago they used to race the World Motocross Championship, and today they race the National Motocross Championship. Let's see what's the throttle response and if the suspensions can cope with these jumps. Okay guys, we've come to the end of this test and to the conclusions of this Fantic 450 Enduro model 2022. My thoughts are definitely positive. I was able to ride the bike both in the Enduro and in the motocross track with no problem. The main differences from the Enduro model to the motocross model is the suspensions that have been revolved and set for Enduro. Then also the engine and the gearing ratio. You use a lot more the gears on the Enduro model. The big difference when I was riding in the motocross track was that with the Enduro model, I was using the gear a lot. Whereas in the forest and in the rocks, where most of you will use this bike, the bike I could keep almost always the same gear. Mostly I was riding in third gear. Suspensions were okay for me, you know, I'm not very lightweight. One of the aspects I appreciated most is the stability of this bike. It's absolutely stable, especially on the front end. When we were on a lot of bumps and rocks, it would always keep perfectly the direction and it would help me get inside the turn. Once inside the turn, it had a very good throttle response. It was smooth enough for me to find traction, but at the same time I could feel it pushing me out of the turn. We all know that the Fantic is using the Yamaha WR frame and engine. One would expect the bike to be very similar to the WR, but in reality I felt it different, especially from the engine point of view, because the Fantic uses a completely different ECU. It uses the GET ECU that has been completely remapped. I have personally been doing some testing before the release of this bike, and I can tell you now, if we have to compare it to the WR450, the torque on the WR450 is much more gentle, so much more maybe for more amateur use. This is a bike that one that wants to go racing can race. The sprocket ratio, I believe you can even add probably a couple of teeth on the sprocket because you can hit really high speeds. But if you're thinking about rally racing, Rebel X Sports has already a kit for this bike, which will be released shortly before end of the year. I can tell you, I believe this could be really a good Dakar bike. Most components are Japanese, so we have Japanese quality and high reliability. One thing I would change if you're planning to buy this bike for rally or a major off-road riding, very, you know, just weekend ride, is the seat. This seat is great for enduro. It has huge amount of grip, but clearly for long hours on this, you'll probably want to get a rally seat cover. But if you plan on using it only for enduro, this gives you absolute grip even if there is mud and, you know, you get all dirty. Other things that are different other than the full plastics that you can see, we have a different exhaust. This contributes to that slightly more torque that you feel when riding. We have a small dashboard where we have all the indication. We have the neutral, engine, fuel and all that stuff. I like it that it's pretty compact. Eventually, if you want, you can remove it. Another interesting difference from other enduro bikes is that we have the ignition and to stop the bike all on one switch. This, in my opinion, is very good because if you need to add anything on your handlebars, you have plenty of space, because on the left side you only have the clutch. The clutch is a wire clutch, not the hydraulic. There are mixed opinions on this. I personally prefer the wire clutch because if I'm in the desert, in the dunes, and I use a lot the clutch, I can feel it. I'm losing it. Whereas with the hydraulic, once the clutch is dead, it's dead. You still have quick access to the air filter. You just remove this Jesus fastener, it comes out and you have access here. Very good to have the air filter up high in this position because it's less prone to get dust, and especially if you cross water, it will be much more difficult for water to get inside your airbox. Speaking about brakes, we have Nissan brakes. I believe these are very precise, and that was my feeling when riding. One big difference that I felt between the enduro model and the motocross model that I also tested is the handlebar position. On the Fantic XEF 450, when you're standing up, you feel your body is more moved towards the front end. So I felt a bit more comfortable for my height on the motocross handlebar triple clamp setup. But this, having it lower, it was much more agile in the tight turns inside the forest. Whereas if I had a higher handlebar, and this is, I believe, is a misconception and mistake that many riders do. If you are tall, you tend to put risers, and other than losing a bit of sensibility on the front end and the bike not being so precise like having it in the OEM position, even the bike becomes harder to turn and, you know, take down inside the rut. This means that even if I'm a tall rider, I'm 183 centimeters, I would still run the OEM setup. I just brought the handlebar a bit backwards. Small detail, but very useful, is the carbon protector on both sides, because this has the exhaust that goes around the engine. It's pretty big, meaning that we won't risk to burn our boots or our pants. Other than the heat shield, the carbon heat shield for the exhaust, very nice is the bash plates because it provides good protection to the water pump and hoses. All in all, I really like the bike, and I'm personally thinking of buying one to tweak it and turn it into the perfect Dakar machine. Stay around, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!